see her screen. I want to see her. Okay, you're using the Facebook on my system.
I know that's really
guy that wants to do this shit, not me now.
tight.
Yeah. Okay, that's it. What else?
Any talks.
Hmm?
Any talks.
Yeah.
Any talks.
We have time for time.
Any
Okay,
little
for time.
talks.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Konde.
Good evening. Good evening.
Pleasure to meet you, sir.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, good evening, Mr. Barry, sir.
Good evening, madam. And how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Nice.
Bosse. Okay.
Mr. Razak, good evening.
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello,
I'll be
Mr.
back shortly.
Good evening, Bosse. Oh, I guess he has a voice. Hello, Mr. Razak. I think he has a voice issue.
You hear me now?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Good evening.
All right. Thank you very much.
It's a pleasure to meet you, sir.
Same here.
Yeah. All right, I think we have just another 3 minutes more. Okay. Hello, Bosse.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you, Bosse.
Everyone.
Yeah. Good evening. So, do we start right away or do we?
I guess we can start with the prelim. Larry needs about 5 minutes, but I've been talking to her, so she should join us. But let's start just as we had planned.
Okay. Sure. That's fine. Sure. Hello, everyone. Our distinguished participants and panelists, welcome to this series on collaboration for success. If you're joining for the first time, it's this is series 4 of collaboration for success series. And today we will be having a conversation on literacy for development and policy for socio-economic growth. Beyond the conventional concept of literacy as the set of reading, writing, and counting skills, according to the definition by UNESCO, the organization who has been the forefront of who has been in the forefront of advancing the literate world. We have an understanding of literacy as a means of identification, understanding, interpretation, creation, and communication in an increasingly digital text-mediated, information-rich, and fast-changing world. Quality education, however, provides learners with the capabilities they require to read and write, communicate effectively, process information, become economically productive, develop sustainable livelihoods, contribute to a peaceful and democratic society, and enhance the individual well-being. It's a fact that education leads to empowerment. And when we are all empowered, we can actually take control of our environments or our situations. So it has actually become very important that we look at ways forward of harnessing our various potentials to, for the collective goal of this nation, looking at functional literacy, the underserved and the unserved. Our panelists are already waiting to demystify literacy as a fundamental tool for quality education and socioeconomic development. And we hope that this conversation we're going to be having this evening is not going to be another academic exercise, but it should help us to actually find ways forward to make literacy a positive means of developing our nation. So before we move on to the event, I would like to just a few logistics. The participants are already muted. The panelists can please mute their mics while not speaking. The polls will actually, the webinar polls will be launched during the webinar. Our panelists will be available to answer all questions at the end of, during the Q&A sessions. Please kindly use the Q&A tool below the screen, below your screen for all questions, please. You can send your questions using the Q&A tool, and our panelists will answer the questions during the Q&A session. The webinar is being recorded, and it will be shared after the webinar. The recordings will be shared after the webinar. I am your co-host. My name is Josephine on Collaborating for Success, and Mr. B, our host, will be taking us forward from here. Hello, B.
Yeah, thank you, Josephine. Once again, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We really welcome you to this Series 4 of the Collaborating for Success webinars. It's one of the things that we're doing to commemorate our 10th year anniversary as Granny Murray, and also marking the milestone. So we're seizing the opportunity to also, commemorate quite a number of UN calendars as well, especially those that actually applies to education, social and economic development. It's very key and it's very important to us, and very important to us as adults, and important for the growing children as well. So we are collaborating and cooperating while we also coordinate all the series to improve the advocacy and the voice of reason, such that we can make progress in education industry. Now, the first two webinars that we did back then in June and July were basically focused on parenting and teaching. Now, we had panelists, members of the panels that were actually from other continents as well. As a matter of fact, 4 continents represented in the first two webinars. The essence of that was basically to look at global standards and approach to parenting and teaching, such that we can basically learn from how it's done in other climes, especially at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. We had the third webinar, which happened last month, and that was actually focused on achieving low-cost education. Now, the idea behind that is that we needed to solve local problems as well. So the panels that were on the panelists on those were actually on that particular webinar were primary Nigerians, and we looked at that situation as an opportunity to bring Nigerians who can actually help to solve Nigerian problems. No one will come from outside of the country to solve our education problems for us. We'll have to solve it by ourselves. Same thing for this webinar, the fourth one, which is holding today. It is the fourth in the series, and we are looking at literacy. Now we are actually having a fully Nigerian panel, and the idea behind it is that we're looking at them using their experience and the discussion to be able to solve a Nigerian-based problems and based on Nigerian criteria in terms of how we can actually go forward on that. So we are looking at actually everyone benefiting from this conversation, both young and old, and we're looking at a situation whereby we carry on with the advocacy, and we're able to actually use our voices to actually help in solving long-standing problems in education and literacy. It promises to be insightful with a lot of key points that will be based on the panelists' hindsight, and it will be insightful, and it also promises to give us a whole lot of foresight that we'll be able to use to move into the future. I welcome everyone once again, and would appreciate that you take your notes. I have my pen, I have my notebook here. I intend to take notes from this honorable panel, and I believe that at the end of the day, we will be able to learn and take a whole lot of lessons forward. Thank you very much. Abosede, over to you.
Thank you, B. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Josephine. Good evening and welcome again, everyone. My name is Abosede Poloba Meso, and I have the privilege to moderate this session this evening. We all know that literacy is the reason why we're here on this panel today, because we can read, we can write, we can understand what is being said. I mean, literacy cannot be gainsaid. It is important. We need to see how we can move it forward in Nigeria. I'll read a few things to us just to get the ball rolling and put us in the mood for this conversation. The Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, estimates that the COVID-19 epidemic will cause a skill loss that could result in about 1.5% drop in global economic output for the rest of this century. Let's put that in Naira and Kobo. For the United States alone, that will represent an economic loss of about 15.3 trillion. This was a report that was launched on the 8th of September internationally celebrate the International Literacy Day. 8th of September 2020, however, is the 5th anniversary of the Global Goals, the sequel to the Millennium Development Goals. How are we doing as a world? And how are we doing as Nigerians? And this is the kind of background that has brought this session together today. Our panelists are people who have authored books, who are doing well in the policy space, who are doing well in their businesses. We want to hear from them. We want to hear how they've been doing it. We want to know how we can help other people to get to this space, especially in the face of this pandemic. It is clear that we have a lot to surmount. If we look even at the Nigerian issues we were already dealing with before this came to the fore. So we have very important people with us today. Everybody who is on this call is important, but let me quickly introduce to you my panelists so you know what I'm talking about. Their profiles will be coming on your screens shortly, and I'll read it out as we say.
Boss, you're mute.
My apologies, please. Our only lady panelist for today is Olarewaju Olniyitan. She's a skilled consultant and entrepreneur, an author, a speaker, and an advocate with over 15 years experience, focusing on creating wealth, creating jobs, incomes, and economic growth. Lanre founded and leads W Holistic Business Solutions. She also serves as the executive director of her firm's social impact project, SEED, Sustainable Education and Enterprise Development, Future for Kids Africa and Accelerate Hub. Lanre has worked closely with international and local private sector actors, federal and state governments, development agencies, academia, membership-based organizations, and non-governmental organizations in a wide range of capacities. She is a 2019 Obama African Leader and the recipient of several awards and recognitions for her work. She currently also sits on the board of Jessefield Microfinance Bank. Lanre loves learning, thinking, and creating innovative and sustainable solutions to complex global issues. You will agree with me that we want to hear from people like this. Next, please. Okay, next we have Mr. Razak Adekoya, who leads the DFID Inclusion Program. Currently, Razak serves on the board of numerous organizations, including the Center for Inclusive Development. He is a speaker of the Nigeria People's Disability Parliament, and Razak has written 4 books. He's an Ashoka scholar and contributes to several policies across African countries, including the AU Guideline on Education and Youth Exchange for Persons with Disabilities. He is the co-founder of African Volunteering Week. Can I also say that I was doing some work in Kaduna State, Nigeria a few years back, and I came in contact with Razak. This person knows what he is saying in terms of inclusion, and I cannot wait for us all to learn from his wealth of experience. Next, please. Our next panelist is Oladipo Akande. He is an alumnus of the University of Surrey in UK, where he graduated with a bachelor's in English degree and a master's degree holder in professional ethics from the University of Lagos, and an alumnus of the Institute for National Transformation. Dapo is a weekly writer of the popular column Character Matters with DAPS in the leading national daily on financial news Business Day for the past 2 years. Oladapo Akande is an author of 2 books, The Last Flight and Shifting Anchors. Dapo will soon be launching his non-governmental organization, Minds Reform Initiative, which will focus on manners, integrity, neighborly love, discipline, and success. Oladapo is happily married with children. You'll agree with me that this is coming at the right time. Character, the quality education is beyond just the cognitive, it's behavioral, it's character. Most of the things we see going wrong in Nigeria right now, if we could take on proper character traits and also feed those to the younger ones, we know that we'll be making more of a headway. Next, please. Our final panelist, and not the least by any stretch of imagination, is Mr. Omabwise Bese Barrow. He's a prize-winning chartered accountant and fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, ICANN. He worked previously at IBTC Limited, and now he's the CEO of Learning Impact Nigeria. He is an ASTD-trained learning designer, workplace coach, and mobile learning designer, a techpreneur, and a promoter of the epapervendor.com. Omabwise, who is an author of over 20 books, is also a member of the Securities and Exchange Commission's National Financial Literacy Technical Committee and a director of Thoughtful House, Autism Center, and Creative Learning International School. You're welcome to all my panelists, to Omabwise, to Oladapo, to Razak, to Olanrewaju. Thank you very much for joining us today. The next one. And this is a brief of my humble self. 15 years in consulting. I've worked both in KPMG professional services and in the development sector, implementing private sector development programs and creating opportunities for dialogue. My name again is Abosede Polobamesho. Thank you very much. So quickly, you'll notice that all my panelists have something in common. They're all authors. They've written one thing or the other. To start this off, and as part of commemorating this year's International Literacy Day, my panelists, in no particular order, will give us something to guide us, something to show us, to shed light on why they thought authorship was the way to go, especially in a country where we're not really known for reading. While we're trying to change that, what was it? Let me start with you, Oladapo. What was it that got you writing and made you decide to actually write a book?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much. And once again, I want to say a big thank you to me for being invited to take part in this program, which is a worthy one. I stumbled across writing, really. It was not something I sought out to do. One of my brothers, a younger brother of mine, a few years ago was telling me that he loves the way that I relate to my children, the way I'm always nurturing them and the way they think and the way they behave and so on. And he said to me, look, this is a gift. And he believes that anything that God has given one is not for one only. It's not for you only, it's not for your family only. And it's something that the society itself should benefit from. And I took that and I was very excited, but I didn't really know how to go about it, to be honest. Until one day I was jogging, doing my morning jog. All of a sudden, some very strong thoughts came into my mind. I got back home, I put it down on the computer, I wrote it was an article, and that's how I started. I first of all started by broadcasting it on WhatsApp and so on, and people were saying, wow, we love this is great. When is your book going to be out? That is really the first I heard about book. And when I heard that, I said, this guy's a joker, how could he me book? But literally a few months later, I saw that I'd written about 17 articles. And I thought, well, if I write another 8, that should be enough for a book. And that is really how I went about writing the book. I sent it to a former VC of a university. He looked at it and said, this is fantastic. Are you sure this is you? And that is how I went on to publish the book. Yes. Wow. So that's my story.
Thank you, Dapo. Just shortly before we go ahead, just to say this, we're all going to please be on first name basis. I stand on all protocol just so that the flow is really fun. Thank you, please. Larry, I'm going to go to you now. Larry, are you here? Okay.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Larry, you wrote an interesting book. One of your books is Entrepreneurship for Children. Can you just tell us where that came from, especially because it's focused on children and that's a bit unusual? Can you tell us the thinking behind that and how it came about?
Okay, I must first mention apologies if you hear any noise. I'm on the road, but I hope you can all hear me well. Okay.
Yes, go
so,
ahead, please. We can hear you.
Okay, so I decided to write a book not because I wanted to. I grew up in an entrepreneurial family, and because I wanted the same for my children, but it was different for me. So I'm the daughter of a market woman, very proud to be that. So I learned entrepreneurship from my mom, and because I grew up not to be a market woman, for instance, I wanted to still pass the knowledge to my kids. So I decided to start, creating worksheets for them at home, trying to encourage them to do things on their own. And then one day I just looked at all I had created, and I looked at it, and a friend of mine came to visit and said, "Are you going to keep all this knowledge to yourself? This is something that if you compile everything, it will come together as something that every parent can use with their children, or even schools can use with students and all of that." So that was what started the journey for me for writing the book. And as soon as I did that, I realized that I actually had something in my hands that could benefit everybody. So that's when I started the journey of writing the book. And when the book came out, a lot of people were like, "This is different," because I run a consulting firm where I teach SMEs about entrepreneurship, and even trying to break it down for children as young as 5, because when I started this, my kids were 5 years old, and they started their own business when they were 7. That process of actually breaking it down for children to be able to get the concept of entrepreneurship was even a learning process for me. And writing that book has been really good, because even the parents that have read it are saying the book is good enough for them as parents because it breaks it down in easy to understand language. So that's when it all started. Even though I had more books in my in my system for adults, it just made more sense starting with the book for kids, because it was something that I already had all the resources for.
Yeah, thank you, Larry. And I think I'm beginning to see a common thread of there's no one who actually sat up one day and said, "I can do all this." But they took everything that they've heard from people who had seen different pieces that they had done and took that stride and decided, "Okay, I can do this. It's good enough." So thank you. Razak, I will come to you now. You have 4 books that you have written. Please talk us through how the journey started and has been, and how you got here today.
All right, thank you very much. Sincerely appreciate. Perhaps I also need to apologize in case you get 1 or 2 sounds at the background, just completing a training that I just facilitated. So for me, it's quite similar to the first 2 speakers. The first is this. I was not a person with disability from child. So I actually acquired disability at adult, possibly, my final year in university. And I have to go around from finishing almost a course at the final year to starting afresh from 100 level again, perhaps because my disability could not allow me to take that course any longer. And after going through that phase, there's a 2 different things. If you are congenital in terms of disability, that is, you are born with it, and adventitious, that is, you acquiring it at adult. It's a 2 separate things. So for me, losing my sight at adults, it was more than tough for someone who perhaps started his career pretty early. I started at age 17 as an honor personality in Lagos. And at that moment, I knew losing everything from beginning back to square one. So a moment came and one of my friends said, "Look, you've gone through this moment, you've conquered it. Now, why don't you tell the story?" Because a lot of people would be going through this similar phases. There are parents who would have teenagers who are going through this. There are adults who might be going through this. So why don't you change or brand your problem, what people seems to be your problem, and make it a product. And at that moment, that was why I titled my first book, Brand Your Blindness. That is, whatever the problems are, can you change it to something else and brand it and make make something positive out of your story. I think that's just the beginning, and from there to the second book, to the third, and to the last one, which is also around entrepreneurship. But the first book was more of changing the narrative. And a lot of people might have read about people going down the drain and starting from afresh. But a lot of times, coming from a Nigerian perspective, you rarely found people. That's just the basic for me. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Razak. And I like two things you said. The Nigerian perspective, because disability is one thing on its own. In Nigeria is another. And then being able to tell that story from someone who is walking it and living it is a strong story. Is a strong story. And I want to say thank you for putting that out there. I'm going to go to Omagushe Barrow now. You have 20 books. How is that?
Sorry,
Thank you very
over
much.
20 books, as a matter of
Over
fact.
20 books. I
He
stand
was being
corrected.
conservative
Over
with
20 books. Wow. How? You know what? Let's
And
even
more
start
to
from the
come,
number.
actually.
Let's start from the number. How do you do 20 books with the other things you're doing in Nigeria? How do you do 20 books and over?
Okay, thank you very much. And I will try to answer it. I think that for me, writing has been about the combination of passion and pain. So when I am passionate about something, when I have learned something and I'm really excited about it and I want to, and I have no other choice but to share it, then I think that writing becomes a natural vehicle through which I can express what I am passionate about. So a number of things I've been passionate about over the years. My first book was a textbook on pension fund administration when I worked in the pension industry. When it just started in the early 2000s, you know. And then subsequently, I've written about things that have to do with creativity and innovation, and like some of the other speakers, entrepreneurship and financial literacy, leadership development for young children. And this was really born out of a combination of passion and pain, because as a corporate trainer, I found that a lot of the remedial adult education that we were offering in corporate classrooms to banks, to telcos, and to oil companies were skills that indeed should have been taught and learned when they were younger, you know. So I started to write a series around what we now call life skills education, you know, and built a number of books and also board games and all sorts of things to support life skills education in communication skills and financial literacy and entrepreneurial development in leadership and so on. And a few of them have also been out of that combination of passion and pain, things that that have touched me personally. So I'm the parent of an autistic child. And so writing about my story as a parent and offering other parents resources and tools, including animated videos and cartoons to help them to understand how to cope with and to educate and raise their children on the autism spectrum. That was important, you know, and written about right now, hoping to publish a book within the next few weeks on political literacy, which is also a combination of passion and pain. Myself being a politician and a former contestant and candidate for an elected post in Nigeria, and also just reminiscing on that and some of the challenges. So I think that for me, writing is about what I love and what has also hurt me, that I try to convert into love so that other people can learn from it.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Omagushe. And I think what I've heard listening to all four of you is there's something in your story. Most times we almost don't want to say it out, but it's that story that actually culminates in something that someone else can then use. I'm going to ask one more question to everybody. And again, it is context. Razak mentioned it. Nigeria were not known as a reading country. Our reading culture can be better. Beyond the passion and the pain and where it's coming from, why did you think someone was going to pick it up? Yes, your passion made you put it on paper, but why did you think someone was actually going to pick it up? It wasn't going to be a wasted effort. I'll start with you again, Dapo.
Thank you, boss. Like you said, we do have that challenge in Nigeria with the reading culture, which is very, very poor. Still, one has to find a medium to get one's thoughts out there. I wrote my book believing that there are enough people in Nigeria who are concerned about the way the country is and the way where it's going, where it's heading. Enough people concerned about the lack of character, the lack of values in our society. Enough people concerned about the future of their children. That will be enough for them to pick it up and see what can they do, what contribution can they make, at least starting from the corner of their own families, and so on and so forth. And that's what really pushed me to put the books out there. Yeah.
That's impressive, because it takes a lot to actually make that decision. Razak, can I ask you the same question? What made you think someone was going to read what you put out there?
I think it's more important to look at it from what is the problem, because the book is not just for me, but for people. That's number one. The second part of it is I've learned to understand that the audience we have now are the people who are not willing to read voluminous book. Brand Your Blindness, when I wrote it, it was more than 300 pages. But the fact is, I knew at the back of my mind, this book is not something people want to read for long. So the best is to make it concise, precise, and speaks to the important thing that actually matters to the audience out there. And we need to understand that, because I knew the audience wasn't meant for the old person, but it was meant for those who are within the youth space, who are struggling to get out of that, perhaps the problem or the disability. So that's just the main thing for me. So I've decided all my books, I don't make them voluminous, and I ensure it's targeted at solving a particular problem, not all problems, because I cannot solve everybody's problem.
True that. Razak, just before we leave you, your books, are they in formats that other physically challenged people are able to get, or just normal paperbacks?
So I have done it not for person with disability alone. You have the audio copy, you have braille copy, you have the art copy, because it is not just for person with disability. I think the last time the former US ambassador picked the book and read, I had never knew him, but he made a request for more than 500 copies. So it's not just about those people. It's not about persons with disability. I think it's meant for, the only thing is just ensuring it's accessible. And perhaps as we talk longer around issue of literacy, we'll talk into issues of accessibility and inclusivity.
Wow, thank you, Razak. Bisha, same question to you. Why do you think people are going to read one and then 20 and more? Why do you think they were going to pick it up?
Well, here's what I've always known and believed. I agree completely with the point that we don't like to read. We don't have a good reading culture. I've seen it played out in so many ways. I tell people that I told someone in New York, you go for a book fair in Nigeria, parents and on sweets and on treats than on actual books, and this is actually a book fair. So it can be quite disheartening. But I also believe that in every society there are core people that understand the imperative of learning and literacy and are very interested in these things. And from a business perspective, I just tell people that I just want to find those people. And if there are only 100,000 of such people, I want to find them. I want to drill down on them. I want them to become strong advocates of the things that I am writing, that I am pushing out. And that is more than enough for me. So Nigeria is a huge country, but it's a huge country with a small niche of people
Yeah.
who really understand these things. And our job is to appeal to that audience and use that audience as a springboard to sort of branch out to the other people. So there are lots of people who want Nigerian books, who want books with a rich African content and context. And somebody's got to supply it, you know, and so I'm happy to be part of the people like the other panelists who are trying to fill that gap for the people who appreciate it, you know, just like the wonderful people who are with us today on the webinar, because they are here because these matters really make sense to them.
Thank you.